Well, good morning, class. Oh, thank you. I'm so glad that you're here. Let's start off by talking about theater. There's a very important method that's known as black box. And at its core, it says there are only two things that are necessary for theater. You need an audience. Thank you for being here. And you need an actor. In fact, you can strip away the props, you can take away the costumes, you can even destroy the set. And as long as you have one person in the audience and one person on the stage, well, the show can go on. And education is much the same way. In fact, you can strip away the tests, the systems, the technology, and if you get to the core of the issue, all that you really need for teaching and learning to happen is a teacher and a student. And both of them are human. And it is understanding and engaging these fundamental human relationships with compassion that is the core work of a teacher in any setting. In fact, one of the greatest predictors of student engagement, effort, and achievement is the relationship that they have with their teacher. Now, I've been a Utah teacher for the past 6 years, both in elementary and in high school. And as I've had the chance to work in both public, charter, and visit private schools, I've found that we need teachers, administrators, schools that are able to set the right culture. Teachers who are more than content experts and test gurus, but who are able to engage their students with compassion. And this is a learned and practiced skill. And through study and observation, I've identified 3 essential qualities of compassionate teachers. Number 1, compassionate teachers believe there are no bad dogs. Now, when I was growing up, my father referred to me and my siblings as either his good dogs or his bad dogs. Thanks, Dad. Now, if we were teasing, neglecting our chores, or maybe chewing on the couch, we would get a firm, "Oh, bad dog." But if we were kind, if we were helping each other, maybe giving him a foot rub on a Sunday, we would get the inevitable, "Oh, you are such a good dog." Now, it was silly, I get it, but it was a reminder that worked because he understood that we inherently wanted to perform, that we wanted to be good dogs. He just took the time to remind us. Now, I have 2 dogs myself. Their names are Huck and Finn. I'm an English teacher. When I first started taking them to obedience training, I was told to come to the very first class without the dogs. That was strange, I thought, but okay, so I went to the class. And it was there that I learned a very important lesson about compassion. You see, most of the issues that owners label as either bad behavior really stems from an inability of the owner to communicate with the dog, with patience to engage with them in a way they can understand. And it's easy for an exasperated owner to resort to being heavy-handed, to act in a way that injures the relationship. And what I learned there translated very quickly into my classroom. I realized, you know what, there are no bad dogs. There are only students who are yearning for a teacher who will treat them with compassion, who will lead them. But it's easy and it's common to label someone who is underperforming or misbehaving as either careless or lazy. I'm reminded of horror stories I've overheard in teacher break rooms of that one student they just can't wait to get rid of, how they tire of constantly sending them to the office. And yet, the teachers I know to be compassionate colleagues rarely have these issues. Where are these kids, they might ask. And the reason why is because they've learned to check themselves without even thinking about it. By believing there are no bad dogs, they forestall premature judgment. And that's what allows them to get to the root of the matter. You see, a student who may be underperforming or misbehaving may simply be looking for the love in their classroom that they're not getting at home. Like a 4th grader I knew who felt that the only love that he got came from his principal. And so he misbehaved until he got sent there. And it wasn't until a teacher that I knew in West Valley decided, I'm going to keep this kid in my classroom, I'm going to show him that he's a good dog, that those behaviors disappeared overnight. Because the support he was looking for finally showed up in his classroom. Other problem students may simply be responding to the series of low expectations that have been set to them by the series of teachers they've had in the past. like a student I had who had grown accustomed to flying under the radar, who had bought the story that he wasn't worth the time because he was just another ESL kid. And it wasn't until I took the time to invest in him, to show him that he was a good dog, to communicate with him the way he needed to be communicated to, gave him that extra help, that his issues of not showing up, not doing his homework, not participating in class, again, disappeared. By the end of the year, this kid, who was another ESL kid, was outperforming his peers in English reading and writing. At the end of the year, he came to me to sign his yearbook. And he started crying as I was filling it out. And I asked him, "Hey, what's up?" And he replied, "It was in your class that I finally felt like a real student." And that showed me that this kid had wanted to perform for years. And somehow, he just never gotten the time and compassion from his teachers. There are no bad dogs. Our classrooms are filled with good dogs. And compassionate teachers recognize that and communicate it to them on their level. 2, compassionate teachers hold the line. Now, what I love about Jurassic Park is when we first meet the velociraptors. And it's because they remind me so much of my students. They are smart, and they want to be fed in class. And if you do not come ready to feed them, well, let's just say they can tear apart a cow in seconds. And of all the dinosaurs in the park, it is the velociraptor that is constantly testing the fences. Well, compassionate teachers recognize that they must set a firm and clear boundary that nurtures high expectations. You see, being a caring and supportive teacher is way more than your high fives. And it doesn't mean coddling or making things easy either. It means balancing the press for learning with the pressure for test performance that comes down from administrators and lawmakers. There was a kid in a high-crime community in California who claimed that he liked his high school because the teachers there, and these are his words, not mine, really sit on your face. Now, what he explained was that these teachers would follow up with them, provide extra academic support. If they sloughed, misbehaved, forgot their homework, they followed up with a parent or guardian. In short, these students interpreted their teachers' efforts to hold them accountable as the evidence that they cared. And it pays to care. And it takes energy, but it pays. And there's any teacher out there who could probably name for you their personal velociraptor, that one student who is just always pushing the edge and wants to know, "Hey, just tell me what I can get away with." But when we hold the line firmly, not with prejudice, not with malice or frustration, and we offer them every opportunity to make the right choice, following up with the appropriate consequences, but without emotion, there does come a time when that child will transform from velociraptor to student. When the prison of their compulsory education becomes the freedom of their self-education. Because compassionate teachers refuse to accept a half-hearted effort. They press students to learn by encouraging them, looking at their work, providing constructive feedback, refusing to give up on them. And by doing so, they create a relationship that holds the line and encourages them to reach those high expectations. 3, compassionate teachers relate to context. Now, every time I meet somebody new and it comes up that I'm a teacher, I get a couple generic comments about, "Oh, how hard that must be. I don't think I could ever work with those kids," or, "Ooh, what about the pay?" But eventually, But eventually, that conversation comes around to that one favorite teacher who had engaged with them with compassion, of their Mr. Ashton or their Mrs. Fossen, who nurtured their love of music and of the violin, of their Mrs. Hall, that one teacher that stuck with them through the struggle of math, 2 years in a row, I might add, until it just clicked. And the reason why they think back on these teachers is because they had encouraged relationships that fostered vulnerability, These teachers recognize where their students are in their life development and communicate to them appropriately. I had a student in one of my classes open up in a class discussion about their first breakup. Drama bomb. And this was that chance to say, oh, I am so sorry. And then I could have moved on with that day's lesson. But again, here's one of those golden opportunities to practice empathy and relate it to something we were learning in class. So we started comparing that situation to a traditional character arc. How there was a possibility to become either a hero or devolve into a villain. Now, when I said this, the student leaned back and said, well, I don't want to be a villain. And I said, I don't want you to either. But let's take a look at this a little closer. This is where the hero is determined. Do they face their challenge, or do they allow it to overcome them? We discussed how she had crossed the threshold of comfort into this new relationship, and then, bam, heartbreak, chaos, the whole worldview is shattered. You cry out, why? Why is this happening? Well, she sat back and said, it's like you're reading my mind. And I leaned forward and said, you have no idea. But let's take a look at this. Can you see how in your situation you could be tempted to let go of who you are, become catty and jealous, and become the villain? She responded quietly, I almost did today. And I'm so glad that I had the chance to say, but you didn't. And that doesn't change the hurt, and it's still chaotic, and it is hard. But each time now that you are tempted to give up, to let go of who you are, you can remember where you're headed. That you are a hero, that you are going to reach resolution, that you will take this experience and turn it into wisdom. Our classrooms are filled with these opportunities to relate to our students' context. And compassionate teachers capitalize on those opportunities to the benefit of their students and teach lessons that last a lifetime. I imagine schools that are filled with administrators that are able to set the right culture, of teachers who have assessed the current high-stakes culture and found it lacking, and have decided to realign their focus with the principles of compassion, of teacher preparation programs where we rarely hear of these things, and we start discussing and developing these ideas, of mentorships that will create classrooms that will care for our good dogs, set boundaries for our velociraptors, that will help relate to our children's context. I firmly believe in the inherent goodness of our students. And I know that almost every teacher enters the profession driven by a call to serve our nation's children, to help them become kind, respectable, well-rounded adults. But the current culture, one that has reduced an honorable profession to a budget item, where talking heads that are far removed from the system advocate for schools to run like businesses, to treat students like commodities, of an approach to testing that ensures scores of wonderful middle managers and grammarians, but no innovators, no thinkers. Well, something needs to change. And no matter the program or the system that's pitched to fix it, it is the culture that surrounds that system that will make it or break it. And if we can create a culture that empowers compassion, that fosters flexibility, one that helps humans, we'll find that the outcomes we've been looking for will have been there the whole time. Thank you.